Thank you all so much for joining us for episode 11, season 4 of our Revise and Resubmit podcast. I'm Dr. Kim Bissell, the Southern Progress Endowed Professor in Magazine Journalism and the Associate Dean for Research in the College of Communication and Information Sciences at the University of Alabama.
And I'm Dr. Annalisa Bowen, an Assistant Professor in the Department of Communication Studies, also at the University of Alabama. And we both work in the Institute for Communication and Information Research, or the ICIR, at UA.
Annalisa, I feel like you're the one who always has these great questions to ask because we're getting ready to introduce our guests. But today, I'm going to reverse the roles with you and try to ask you the big question.
Oh.
Are you ready?
Yep.
Okay. Here it is. When you were a child growing up, do you remember getting a trophy for sports or other activities you were getting in?
Okay, so no team sports, no team sports for me. Like no sports for me. I was pretty good at Foursquare. On
Yes.
and I'm really good at watching sports, but no, I do not play them. And I am fairly certain that I've never have I ever gotten a trophy. But growing up, I did ballet, and my training was within the Royal Academy of Dance, and we had to take exams every year in order to move up a grade. And you could certainly not pass. And you would have to retained in the grade for another year. And I'm trying to think, maybe we got a certificate for piano recitals, but I don't think so. One time I played in a state piano competition. It was great, but awful because I did well, and then we had to play at a fancy recital. But I don't think there were trophies. There were impressive people, and I can't do recitals without messing up, and it was my face, and it's increasing my heart rate even just to think about it now. So yeah, no, I don't think there were trophies even there, and there certainly wasn't a certificate that said, "Hello, you lost." But unfortunate events in my life there. What about you? Trophies in your life?
I think, unfortunately, I'm old enough where what our guest calls trophy culture didn't necessarily exist. There were winners of games and winners of tournaments, matches, and things like that. And I think if you were the winner, the team might have gotten a trophy. But I don't remember it being a situation where everyone playing, and let's face it, even those who lost, got a trophy for participation. My sporting events were tennis and running at the time. Running was pretty terrible, so I definitely didn't even get a certificate for that. I think I remember getting a varsity letter for playing tennis. And I even won some stuff, and I'm not sure I got a trophy. But that was a long time ago. And I know this is one of the things our guest is going to be talking about today.
Yep. And maybe we need to go out and get ourselves somewhere. I think we could probably find one on Amazon.
Absolutely.
But our next guest does study this whole idea of participation or trophy culture, and even suggests that what we see happening across sports today might be destroying the values that America claims it was built on. Let's just pause for a moment, marinate on that.
Yeah.
And that's a direct quote from him.
That is correct. And in today's episode, we cover even more ground because we get to go back to a topic that we've already featured in earlier episodes, and that's a fan identity and the way racial identification can certainly affect the way that we view sports and the effect that it might even have on us as consumers of sports. We cover so much territory today, but we don't want to give it all away. We can't have too many spoiler alerts.
And without further ado, we'd like to extend a very warm welcome to Dr. Josh Dickhaus, an Associate Chair and Associate Professor of Sports Communication at Bradley University. Welcome, Josh.
Thank you so much for joining us today, Josh. We are thrilled to be able to catch up with you.
Happy to be here. Thanks for reaching out.
Absolutely. So, Josh, before we get started, I have to ask, you've been at several universities up and down the United States, from
Mhm.
me to Penn State, back south to Alabama, and now you're not too far out of Chicago. So,
Yep.
when you go on vacation, do you go south or do you go north?
Usually south. I don't love the I guess I got spoiled at Alabama. I don't love the cold anymore, so I prefer to stay somewhere warm if I can help it.
And you're just outside of Chicago, so that's not the
Mhm.
warmest location.
Yeah, it's not. Yeah.
All right, Josh, we're going to keep on learning a little bit more about who you are and what you do. And so we'll ask a couple quick rapid fire questions. So,
Okay.
first, where are you from?
I'm from Cincinnati, Ohio.
Ah, nice. I used to walk by an ice skating rink that was outside there. Never did the ice skating because that's terrifying, but
Uh-huh.
always remember that fondly. Okay, next. When were you at the University of Alabama?
2008 to 2011.
And where are you now?
I'm at Bradley. I've been here since August, Bradley University, August of 2011.
Nice.
So, Josh,
Hmm.
when you were younger, what did you think you were going to be when you grew up? Did you see this path into academia? I know that we're going to get more into sports and all of that, but what did the young Josh think he was going to be when he grew up?
Well, the young me figured out at around age 11 that I wasn't a pro athlete. Um, that I wanted to be involved in sports one way or another. And I really thought a sports broadcasting career
Mm-hmm.
was the direction I was going. The academic side of it got to me when I was in college. Interacting with my professors, and I kind of liked the lifestyle. I liked, at least thought from the outside, I liked the job. And then I did some tutoring in college and found out that I liked teaching,
Mm.
and that's actually how it happened. It was like kind of was around I like more of the academic side of things, and again, just interacting with my professors. I was about 18 or 19 when I said, I think I might like to do this instead.
Mm.
Wow.
Um, and I made that final decision when at the start of my junior year of college. I'm like, no, that's what I want to do. Rather than try to be a sports broadcaster, I'd rather work in academics.
Wow.
Yeah, that's
I,
what I'm thinking. So
I
many
think you're
people
the
have
person.
not.
Or the person who made this kind of had this thought at the youngest age.
Mm-hmm.
Is it? Okay. Yeah,
Uh,
that's about 18 or 19.
Yeah.
of course.
Hmm.
So shifting gears just a little bit, can you tell us a little bit about some of the scholarship that you do and have done in the past?
Yeah. Starting with my master's program, I focused the majority, at least most of my initial work, on issues of race in sport. And so I wrote my master's thesis on race in sport. I wrote my dissertation on issues of race in sport. I published with Amy Jones
Mm-hmm.
on issues of race in sport, and the role that fandom played. And then Keenan Brown and Mia Anderson and I have published a lot on issues of race and sport, and then we've done a lot with like social identity theory. That's one of my favorite theories. The role of the sports fan. We've done a lot of that have tied into like fan identity, how strong your fan identification is, along with often your racial identification. We also have, and we've also published multiple times on the role that those factors play with athletes. I don't like to say the word in trouble, but I guess have gotten themselves in some kind of trouble.
Mm-hmm.
What is the role? How do fans evaluate an athlete's transgressions based off of certain factors like their race or like how big of a sports fan they are? And then I can remember very vividly, one of my first publications here at Bradley was Keenan and me and I doing a publication on LeBron James and the decision.
Mm.
And
Mm.
I was still at Alabama when he did that. And I remember watching it and thinking it was the worst thing I'd ever seen on television. And I've seen, dude, where's my car? And I remember calling Keenan and said, we've got to write something about this. and we published on that. And then one other one that's been one of my favorite publications we ever did, and it was another. I was at my house here in Illinois, and I was watching Real Sports, and they did a segment on trophy culture in America, participation trophies, stuff like that. I remember emailing Keenan and Mia the next day and said, we've got to do a study on this. We've got to see what the negative impact of trophy culture is. And it was a great study. We had a lot of fun with it, but we found out it's such a real thing, the negative impact of trophy culture on American society, because we were both very big believers in all three of us were big believers in the role that sports play in making you a well-rounded sort of person, teaching you how to deal with adversity and whatnot, and that we're sort of tearing that apart. And the study we conducted actually found that it was bleeding all the way into higher levels of college life, that based off of their experience in this quote unquote trophy culture world very much impacted how they felt like they should be treated in their adult life, if you will.
Okay, so I'm gonna keep going down this line. You could come up with one headline, and don't use your article title.
Okay.
For that study, what would that be?
I would say my title for that is, I would say, how would I say it? The trophy culture, or the participation culture, is destroying the values that America claims it was built upon. That's what I would call that.
Okay.
I like
that's what I would call it. I was very passionate about that project because I don't know if you've ever read this, but the vast majority of Fortune 500 CEOs in this country are former athletes.
Oh.
Because they learn what it means to struggle and keep fighting. And if you remove the struggle, then what's the point? If the point of playing the game is to win it. Other than that, then what are you doing out there? You're just exercising. Okay. And it really bothered me. And, and I see this now. I'm more intimately involved in these youth tournaments with sports. And yep, everybody's getting a trophy. Everybody's getting the same thing. And I'm like, well, what did they that award? And so I think that, sports provides a foundation on which helps us become a well-rounded person. And you know what? I think a participation culture, and it went beyond, we didn't just focus just on sports. We focused on our school system and things like that as well. That, identifying that we all have certain strengths and weaknesses isn't a bad thing.
Okay, so I have many follow-up questions.
Okay, go ahead.
And so some of this may be part of what you've studied, and part of it may just be seeking out your opinion. So certainly younger kids who participate in athletics, we definitely have this trophy culture, participation culture going on. T-ball, baseball, everything. But then there's a point, and it could be middle school, often high school, and you look at these students, high school students, who are, trying to play at the collegiate level. And at that point, I feel like the trophy culture kind of disappears, and then you kind of weave in kind of the politics of sport, like and it could be dependent upon the sport that you play, but, getting to showcase events or getting to combines and getting the invite and getting on the field when the college coach is going to be there. I mean, you would like to think that if you've got the skills, that you're going to be the one, or part of the group that is out there playing to potentially get identified by a college coach to go play. But it doesn't happen because you have all these other factors that are kind of introduced there. So what do you think about all that? And when does this, shift between participation culture to we're literally gonna like suck your soul out.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe you'll play in college and maybe you won't. Like, when does that all happen?
It's such an interesting question, because we were having a brief discussion about that in class, today, where because of this sort of, and it can start with parents. Parents can often be the biggest precipitators of this if they're overestimating, the skills set of their kids, who want their kids to specialize in just one sport, right? Or say you shouldn't play this sport until you're like 13. I'm like, well, yeah, if you're a phenom who's going to have like a 20-year pro career, maybe you shouldn't play till you're 13. But if your life in this sport ends at 17, go ahead and play a little younger because you have a shelf life.
Right.
The question you asked is a great one where, I say this in the most respectful way. The athletes that make it to those top levels of even high level college to professional levels are athletic freaks, right? Like they can just do things that 99.9% of the rest of the world cannot do.
Yep.
And so, you want to foster an identity of, because participation in things is a good thing, right? Like we need to get kids off of electronics and exercising and, and running, and that stuff is good. And yes, you hit, we're starting to make it go a little later and later, but it used to be like by middle school, certainly by junior high, you would start to see certain players separate themselves, if you will. And, but even back to when I was in high school, which has been a long time ago, I certainly played with a few guys at least who were dramatically overestimating how good, they were. And that usually started at home.
That's true.
With parents who were so sure that their kid was a star. And I'm like, I don't think you thought this through. Because
based on my direct observation.
Yeah, so I'm watching, I'm like, you're not any better than I am, and I am definitely not a star. And so I think that, you as you get older, you start to see the better players emerge, right? And it doesn't mean you can't still play the sport, right? It just means you have to have realistic expectations about what this sport can do for you or where it's going to take you.
Okay, so I have a question about this study and some of the other studies that you do. Is how do you do them, like methodologically? And what I'm hoping you say is you put people in a room and you tell them to compete, and then you say you don't get a trophy.
Well, what we did, all three of us, that it was a 3-person project with Keenan and Mia and I, and we were quantitative workers. I'm a big believer in numbers, and we comprised. We had a subject pool, and we asked them different questions about, say trophy culture, about participation trophy, all the way up to how they believe they should be handled in their current life. Like, say some of our subjects were in college. And one of the things that we found shocking was that those that believed most strongly in participation culture believed that as a university student, that if they attended every class, they deserved at least a B. And I'm like, what do you mean a B? Like, you mean you showed up, so you deserve. And that was probably the most shocking result of that study, where I'm like, wow, that's even worse than I thought. It could be. So we usually do like survey analyses, stuff like that. For some of the studies we did with athlete transgressions, we produced, like newspaper accounts of fictitious athletes, but had they played different sports, or they had different ethnic backgrounds, and then analyze and different levels of transgressions. And we were able to analyze in a large study how the role of the sport they played, the role of the ethnic background, and how serious was the thing they did, and how that impacted how subjects viewed them. It was stuff like that. It was the main way we did it. A lot of survey analysis, a lot of experimental design.
Okay.
Awesome. Well, okay, so let me circle back around to where you started in terms of your first sort of foray into research, looking
Mhm.
at issues of race and sport.
Yeah.
So I'm curious if your findings or how your findings have changed just over the last decade, because we've seen, so many different social issues just in the last few years. And I
Uh-huh.
have to wonder if that has dramatically affected, what you have found, or could you just tell us a little bit more about all of that? Because I'm so interested in that piece of it.
Thanks. Yeah, we've seen a lot of changes. If I went back, so when I finished my master's degree, my thesis was in 2006, and then my dissertation was in 2011, up to today. Yeah, there's been a definite progression of certain social issues which have been highlighted. That has been part of it. That has made people perhaps more aware, subjects more aware.
Mm,
We are certainly finding that diehard sports fans, they can block a lot of that out.
mm,
Like, and there's no doubt that there's a racial component to this. Every study we've done has found a racial component to how different races view sports or view athletes, or most importantly, view athletes who've gotten in a certain amount of trouble. Another impact that we haven't, and I know it's something we want to look at in the future, and we've talked about it here. I'm not sure if you noticed, but when things are normal, we do a yearly symposium in our sports comm program where we invite different people to talk about different topics. One of the panel ideas that we're not planning to do this year, but we're planning to do it in the future, is on cancel culture.
mm,
And because we think that cancel culture has dramatically impacted the kind of results we get, because people are more concerned with giving the socially desired response
mm,
as opposed to what they really think. And I think that has been a very real issue. Is 5 to 10 years, rather than saying what somebody really thinks, they say, "Well, here's what I'm supposed to say."
mm,
Um, and so that has impacted it as well. Yes. Do I think people are more culturally aware? I certainly hope they
mm,
are. If they aren't, I don't really know what to say to that. But it certainly doesn't mean that that all of our race issues, gender issues are things of the past, because they're certainly not. They're alive and well. And there's a quote from the Billings book that I teach, where Bryant Gumbel on the race chapter says that the combination of race and sport is the third rail of polite discourse, a
mm,
subject sure
Wow.
to burn those who try to speak about it honestly.
mm. Wow.
And I find that to be one of the best quotes I've ever read, because I think it's true. Is that anytime you look at it, you go, well, how true is what we're seeing? How much of what you see on TV is what somebody really thinks and what they think they're supposed to say?
Mm. I mean, I think one of the things that I'm thinking about here is just how research may not change
Mhm.
exactly, methods may not change exactly, but there's, like, we can't just say, "Oh, studied that, check," and then be done with it, because there's so much change in the world
Mhm.
that we keep learning new things, and then we can study them, and then the more
Mhm.
knowledge we build, the better understanding that we have of, life, which is cool. Keeps us all in business.
Agreed. Yeah, it keeps us working, right? Yeah.
Question about, so you just said that you teach in class about sport and
Mhm.
communication, and your research is around sport and communication. So how are you do you teach are you able to teach a lot of kind of what you've found in your research in class?
You know what? I guess I would say, and I'm not trying to get ahead of where we were going. One of the most interesting things is Keenan and me and I recently completed a book.
Congrats.
And thank you. And what was interesting was how often whatever chapter I was writing coincided with exactly what we were talking about in class.
Nice.
Oh, wow.
It was a lot of fun for me. I don't think my students were as excited about it as I was. I'm like, this is so cool. They're like, oh, whatever. And I'm like, I don't know. It was exciting to me. But yeah, I found that so much of the research we've done has coincided with the sports comm classes I teach. Even I also teach general education courses or general comm classes here. So like I've taught for years, I was the professor for the intro, the survey of communication course. And you could tie in a lot of what we did. I also and research methods here. And it's been fun to talk about those things. But certainly in my sports classes, a lot of those subjects have really lined up. And it's to me, I try to make it as exciting for the students as I can, but like I'm like, this is neat. Like I've been doing all this research and writing, and today I get to talk about it in class. So yeah, I found that particularly, like I said, with the book project, that really lined up.
Okay, so I'm going to totally shift gears on you here. We seem to do that a lot in this podcast. But I know when you were at UA, you had an opportunity to be here when Dr. Jennings Bryant was here as well.
Yes.
And I was wondering if you had a Jennings story that you wanted to share, or wanted to talk about an interaction or a class that you had taken.
Yeah, I'll tell a couple. I'll tell two. One first wasn't even, it was before I even met him. I was at Penn State still, and I had been accepted into the doctoral program. And I was scouring the website looking for how do you apply for an assistantship. And I could not find it. And I'm like, I don't want to look dumb to Dr. Bryant, but I looked, I couldn't find anything. So I finally sent him an email. I said, I apologize. I said, but I am so excited to attend the University of Alabama. I said, but I have been looking at this website forever. How do I go about applying for an assistantship? And I got an email back from him very quickly that said, you just did. Congratulations, you got one.
What?
Yeah. So I hadn't missed it. There just wasn't a form that I could find. And that's how I got an assistantship at Alabama, was I emailed him.
That's
awesome.
And I did take a class with him. And we had some interactions which were always very positive. I think one of my most meaningful interactions with Dr. Bryant was I was teaching a class on persuasion, and I had a student who he just wasn't very engaged in the class. He wasn't showing up a lot. His grade was very poor. And I got like an email from him, and then an email from another professor who who was in his major. And there was a decent amount of pressure to try to give this guy a passing grade. And I was like, well, you're a graduate student, and you don't know what your stature is. And I went and met with Dr. Bryant. I said, look, here's the deal. I said, I'm getting some external pressure from this professor to pass this guy. And he looks at me and he goes, well, you can't do that. I said, well, that's what I said. I go, I just want to make sure I have your support. And he said, you have my support 100%. I do know that turned into a bigger deal from the professor who was trying to give some external pressure to me, did really raise a problem with him, and he did support me through that. And I never personally heard about it again. It was Diane who told me about it. I don't know if she retired yet or not.
Nope, she's still here.
Still here. She's the one who told me that. She goes, there was a huge problem in here. And I'm like, well, that's why I went to see him first. But it was his name that first brought me to the University of Alabama, and I did have a lot of fun taking his class. But I always found that, if you had a problem or an issue, he was very supportive, of you. And I always really appreciated that.
Well, thank you for sharing that.
So Josh, I want to ask you, now that you've been in academia for a little bit of time, thinking back to your 18, 19-year-old self and kind of everything that you've been through doctoral program, and then now not only as a faculty member but also kind of getting even into administration, is it all that you thought it was going to be?
It is. And that's one of the greatest things about this is I love my job.
Mm.
I've never gotten in my car to drive to work and went, oh my God, I hate this. I
Mm.
don't want to do this. And that is a great treat. And I know there's a lot of people in this world who go to a job every day that they don't like.
Mm.
And I'm so thrilled that I'm not one of them. When I was coming out of Alabama, I wanted to go to a teaching first university because I love to teach.
Mm.
I like research a lot, but I love to teach. And I have just found a really great balance here at Bradley. I have an active research agenda, but I've gotten to teach a large variety of classes. I mean, many different, and I've really enjoyed it. And yeah, I'm very thankful that it wasn't one of those things where I was finishing up going, wow, I did this thinking it would be like this. And oh, I don't like, and I've seen that here.
Mm.
I've worked with people here who were like, yeah, this isn't what I thought it would be. And it's like, well, that's unfortunate, right? Like, because you put a lot of work to get here. I'm very thrilled. No, it's lived up. And actually, as administrative opportunities have come my way, much to, I guess, not much, a little bit to my surprise, I've enjoyed that a lot too. Because I know a lot of people go, no, thank you, I don't want that. I like that quite a bit, doing the administrative side of the job. And so, no, fortunately for me, it has worked out like I thought it would.
Excellent.
That's great to hear.
Yes, I'm very happy myself. Thank you.
So I feel like we could have this conversation continue for another hour or 20.
Yeah.
But we're already at this point where we are wrapping it up.
Okay.
And you had mentioned or referenced, when things return to normal. And so I wondered if you had an academic conference that you were looking forward to attending or a place you were looking forward to going when we do finally somewhat get back to normal.
Yeah, I do. Well, first, like I said, we do our yearly symposium, and we can't wait we were going to do that in March. And I always reach out to my Alabama people that are interested in it and try to get them out here as much as possible. We were going to do it in March, and then we got worried about Omicron, which is, by the way, turned out not to be that bad. I guess, we're returning to normal very rapidly here at Bradley, finally. Over the last couple of weeks, as people said, okay, we seem to have this under control. I guess just from back in my Alabama days, AEJ was always such a big conference.
Yeah.
And we presented, Keenan and me and I did virtually in August, and it was just a terrible experience. I was like, this isn't exactly at all, what I had in mind doing this. And so, yeah, like we almost always submit something to AEJ. And so if I could go there, and then NASM was always a conference that I enjoyed a lot. It was probably my favorite sports conference. And yeah, I basically, except for the AEJ, I spent a couple of years not doing conferences because I didn't want to do them virtually. In fact, when we got worried about Omicron and the question came up, what do you want to do the symposium virtually? I as the director of the school, I got to say, absolutely not. I'm not doing it. Yeah, not happening. Totally. And so probably AEJ, because it's always been such a good experience.
Yeah.
And again, it was just so different trying to do it via Zoom, and I didn't like it at all.
I'm right there with you. That was a struggle. Josh, it's been so great getting to catch up with you today, and we are certainly grateful that you took time out of your busy day to catch up with us. Thank you so much.
Thank you, guys. It's been a lot of fun. I can't believe it's been 11 years since I was at Alabama. That's shocking too. Yeah, I know it. So long.
Well, maybe we'll catch up at AEJ then.
I hope so.
Thanks, Josh. Thank you.
All right. Bye.
Bye.